as much as the BJP symbol will not be on the machine, but the BJP is very much part of the political process. If the aim of the PDP was to keep the BJP out, then it should have been willing to make the sacrifice, as we were willing to make the sacrifice in the DTC elections. But clearly, their aim was less about the BJP and more about growing their own party. The 3 MPs or the 5 will lay the foundation for what is to follow in August, September. You can't disconnect this election from an election that's going to come 2 months later. Things are relatively calm, yes, but you don't see the sort of peace that you want to. In fact, if anything, I would go so far as to say that areas that were hitherto peaceful are now more militancy prone than they have been. In my time, areas like Rajouri, Poonch were completely clear of militancy and violence, particularly towards the last few years. Those areas now regularly see attacks against the security forces and attacks that claim sort of lives at sort of regular intervals. You've had encounters in South Kashmir. The targeted killing of minorities happens with unfortunately regular frequency. So militancy still remains a problem on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir. It has not been stamped out, and it's something that we still, as I said earlier, we very much keep sort of at the forefront of our considerations before we plan anything. As far as street protests are concerned, yes, I will grant you that street protests, you don't see them the way you used to. But again, we've had periods of calm like this. I remember in my time, 2011, 2012, in fact, right up to the middle part of 2013, relatively very peaceful and very calm. What sort of is responsible for this? To what extent you have been able to win people over? To what extent you've been able to inject fear into people to stop them coming out? I think this is a matter on which a lot of us will just have to agree to disagree. My own sense is that you've made it so difficult for people to come out and make their voices heard. I mean, you pass such draconian orders that government servants aren't allowed to criticize the government. Fair enough. But you then, within that order, you also include dependents on government servants. They're not allowed to criticize the government. The media, let's not even go there as to how free the media is on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir, and how much the police sort of pressurizes people who sort of are critical of the government. Well, I think I would sort of tend to disagree with you in as much as the BJP symbol will not be on the machine, but the BJP is very much part of the political process. It's like the National Conference is not contesting in Jammu or Udhampur or Ladakh, but we are part of the electoral process. We are fighting together with the India bloc. We are supporting Congress candidates in these seats. So the National Conference is part and parcel of the election in those 3 seats without our symbol being on the machine. The same is true for the BJP. They are very much part and parcel of the political electoral process in Kashmir Valley. The only difference is that this time they've chosen not to field their own candidates, but they are very much sort of they're actively supporting new formations or an older formation that had allied with them post the elections in 2014. And evidence of this is clearly visible on the ground when senior leaders of the BJP come to Srinagar, no less a person than I think he's a general secretary in charge of J&K, Tarun Chugh. You know who he meets. It's no secret whose house he visits in Srinagar and who comes and attends the meeting there. When the Prime Minister or the Home Minister they talk about defeating the members of the India bloc. They talk about defeating the Congress and the National Conference. They don't talk about defeating, let's say, the People's Conference or Apni Party or anybody like that. These are the first major elections in J&K after 5th August 2019. We had District Development Committee meeting elections a few years ago. But these are the first major elections. And the significance of these elections sort of have been heightened by the sort of announcement, first by the Supreme Court, that assembly elections must be concluded by 30th September of this year. Even then, there was some suspicion that possibly that would not happen, and Government of India would find some reason to postpone or delay them. But recent speeches by the Prime Minister, Home Minister, and others, I think it's abundantly clear that these parliament elections will be followed immediately by assembly elections. So that obviously adds to the pressure of these elections as well. As far as the situation is concerned, look, it's as with any election, it's evolving. You have the first phase. Our 5 seats are in 5 separate phases. So the first seat, which is the Udhampur seat, goes to the polls as we speak. People are voting in the Udhampur Parliament seat. And I myself had opportunity to travel in some of the assembly segments of that Parliament seat, the hills of Jammu. And I was actually pleasantly surprised by the response that I got from people there, cutting across sort of the religious divide, because the BJP otherwise in these particular areas has often tried to divide voters on particularly on religious lines. The reports that one is getting from Jammu would suggest that it's not quite the cakewalk even from the Jammu Parliament seat that the BJP would expect, and issues that we haven't really, that sort of mainstream media, barring some sections of it, haven't really focused on. Farmers concerned about the price of urea and other inputs. Families that have traditionally sort of contributed to recruitment in the Indian Army, deeply concerned and unhappy about the new system of recruitment that was unrolled for army recruitments. Even sort of dissatisfaction with the way the post sort of writing down of Article 370 in terms of protection of jobs, land, basic identity. Of course, it's an issue. It's an issue that resonates with the people. And in all 3 sort of areas of erstwhile Jammu and Kashmir, it's an issue in Jammu, as I said. It's definitely an issue in the 3 seats in the valley, and it is more of an issue in Ladakh than perhaps anyone would have imagined. There is a lot of simmering discontent and unhappiness about the post-5th August 2019 situation. Kargil was anyway unhappy. Kargil never accepted what happened on the 5th of August 2019. But increasingly, you find voices in Leh that want to stand up and be counted in terms of what they lost and what they had been promised and not been given. So 370 remains an issue that is very much alive and very much part and parcel of what we talk about when we campaign and when we sort of take our message to the voters. Look, as far as a setback in the Supreme Court is concerned, yes, we had one. But then this is not the first time the Supreme Court has passed judgment on the special status of Jammu and Kashmir. In the past, you have Supreme Court judgments that have actually upheld J&K's special status. But that didn't stop the BJP from making a political issue out of 370 and their desire to abrogate it. So yes, we had a setback in the Supreme Court when it passed judgment. But that's absolutely no reason why, for a party like the National Conference, we should take it off the table where our political agenda is concerned. Have you seen the regular frequency with which people are called to police stations and asked to explain very innocuous social media posts? I mean, look at the way you dealt with politicians' children and grandchildren. I mean, you force them to put advertisements in newspapers, virtually disowning their families. Now, this is something that we saw in the dark days of militancy when colleagues of mine were threatened by militants and told to disown the National Conference. And out of fear of their lives, they would put advertisements in local newspapers saying, I have nothing to do with NC and nothing to do with mainstream politics. It's a different matter that in the evening, those same people would either call us or land up at our homes and say, please don't go by the advertisement. ये मैंने जान बचाने के लिए किया है. मेरा दिल National Conference के साथ है. But just similar measures now being taken by the administration. Young girls are being told to put advertisements in their newspapers. I have never seen a separatist or a political statement from either of them. But for some reason, the government felt a need to make an example out of them. And there are numerous other instances like this. Well, unfortunately, PDP decided that they would try and damage the India bloc. It was their conscious decision to field candidates against the India bloc. The distribution of seats for this parliament election was to be done on a similar formula to the way in which seats were distributed for the District Development Board elections. Those of you who followed those elections, and I'm sure Muzammil, you did, you will remember that when those elections were announced, initially the National Conference had wanted to share those seats on the basis of the 2019 parliament elections, because we felt those were the most recent elections, and 2014 would be 2019 parliament would be the yardstick. The PDP and the PC at that time, they felt that this was unfair. They felt that to compare a DDC with a parliament was wrong, and it should be as far as possible like for like. And they suggested that we distribute seats on the basis of the 2014 assembly elections, even though National Conference took a hammering because of that. My party colleagues went to the National Conference president, Dr. Farooq Abdullah, and actually complained and said, look, the party is going to suffer on this account. He said he doesn't care about the party. It's more important that sort of we unite and fight those elections, and party interests will come second. So if that formula was relevant or was suitable for the DDC elections, then obviously for a parliament election, it has to be like for like. And therefore, distribution of seats for parliament would be on the basis of the 2019 parliament election. 3 seats were with the National Conference, we retained those seats. 3 seats were with the BJP, those seats were up for discussion. Ladakh, Udhampur, and Jammu. Unfortunately, the Congress couldn't find space for the PDP in those 3 seats. But if the aim of the PDP was to keep the BJP out, then it should have been willing to make the sacrifice, as we were willing to make the sacrifice in the DDC elections. But clearly, their aim was less about the BJP and more about growing their own party. But again, that's a conscious decision the PDP took, and so be it.